Daydreaming today.
Welcome to the Gig Boss Podcast, a show about artistry and industry and music. My name is Adam Meckler, and it's my mission to get you the tools to have a thriving career. And today I'm talking to Brett Newski, the leader of Newski, a great throwback 90s alternative rock band. He's been going hard, touring for years. He's got great insights on being a DIY artist, how to make passive income via Patreon. He's got collaborative songs with artists from like the Verve Pipe and Guster, merch items, different merch things. He's just like a creative force, and it was really awesome talking to him. I am currently in Indiana, staying at a hotel. I'm the guest artist at the Indiana State University Jazz Festival this weekend. They're playing some of my music, and then I'm putting on a concert with them tomorrow night, which will have been the previous Saturday night once this is released. I'm excited to do this kind of stuff. I love working with students. I love it when I get to meet people in this setting, and they've been kind of studying my music, so I feel a little bit like a rock star when I get here. I've got my whole merch set up, ready to go. So, like, you know, this is a whole scene for those of you that work in the educational world, the world of music that is taught in schools, I guess. I started kind of honing this scene as another income stream maybe 8 years ago, and I got a merch. I mean, it's like I was already doing merch sales at all my shows, of course, so I have this like suitcase that has lights around it and layers for different CDs and posters and snap bracelets and stickers and t-shirts and all kinds of stuff. So I set all that up every time I do one of these things, and historically I'll do like $300-400 in merch too at these things, because I'm playing for a whole bunch of high schools and middle schools too. And so I'll sign a bunch of CDs and feel like a rock star for a couple of days, and hopefully some of those people will find me on social media and follow me and find me on Spotify and listen to my music that way, because I'm pretty sure they're not listening to the CDs they're buying. But whatever. Brett has lots of awesome insights on all of that. Actually, we talk a lot about that in this conversation, and it's just generally like a positive, you know, spirit, doing really cool things in his career. And I think you're going to get a lot out of this conversation. So let's get right into it. This is my conversation with Brett Newski. Go listen to his music too. That's a 90s R&B. That was kind of my... I was into the other 90s stuff too, which, man, like, listening to your music is a nostalgic free fall for me.
Nice. All right.
In a really good way, man. Like, I don't mean that... I think it's great. It's great.
No, I don't get offended when people tell me we sound like Everclear or whatever. All right, I'm good to go if you are, my dude.
Yeah, I'm good, man. I'm good. So how's it going?
Yeah, morale's good. I had trouble getting off the couch this morning, but got my bum ass to the gym and feel a lot better.
There you go, man. I was at the gym this morning doing a little working out. I was listening to the Theoretical Soul EP.
All right, cool.
Which was fun, man. Last night I
Thanks. I'm glad you like power pop.
Dude, I've been digging it, man. I've always loved that kind of stuff, and it's funny, we were talking the other day and you were like, we function in such different genres, and I was thinking like, yeah, in some cases, but I also I play guitar and I write songs, and I played in a rock band in the 90s, singing, writing songs, you know what I mean? It's like I was always super into that stuff. Yeah. And that's definitely, like, I'm releasing a single on Friday that's like I'm playing guitar and singing, you know. It's like very much
That's cool. That's amazing. You got to it's so cool you got to play as like a touring band in the 90s where you could just sell like 300 CDs in a night.
Oh man, I even just like when we finished our first album, our like jazz record with my wife's band, 2008. I've said this a bunch of times on the podcast, but it was like that year we sold 2,000 CDs, and we were like, this is, we're going to be able to do it. That's $20,000 of income from CDs just alone, you know what I mean? And then it just like slowly.
Yeah, I wonder what the next CD is going to be, you know? I don't know if it's maybe, I don't know what takes off next, you know? It's like everyone has too many clothes, so T-shirts can only take you so far. Vinyl records are pretty niche. You can only sell like so many coasters or stickers or squirt guns at a show. So, yeah, who knows? It's fun to try to be innovative with merch, though. I find that like a fun part of the job.
Yeah, you're doing, I saw CDs and vinyl pre-order right now for Friend Rock, right? Your new record that's coming out. So are you doing any other merch for that stuff?
Yeah, I'm kind of trying to design t-shirts. I got a bunch of shitty t-shirt designs right now, so I got to come up with some better ones. But we have a song called Only Macaulay Culkin Can Save Us Now, which is like this social commentary on kind of, I think we need to release it during like the next political disaster, you know, kind of how
Sure.
nobody can agree on anybody to lead the country. And if there's one person we can probably all agree on, it's probably Macaulay Culkin. So I posted
like
that as a t-shirt and no one really seemed to like that. So I don't think we'll print it.
Man, you know, as my kids are now watching Home Alone, so it's like now there's multiple generations of people that are falling in love with Macaulay Culkin as a cute little kid. You know, it's kind of...
Yeah, you got to respect Culkin because he was like the biggest star in the world, and then he just like was like, I'm good. I'm just gonna quit while I'm on top, and he
started
seems
a
to have
rock
a shit
band.
together. Yeah.
Didn't he have like
totally.
a pizza box band or something where they would bang on pizza boxes on stage? And
It was called, it was kind of like a gimmick punk band. It was called Pizza Party Express or something.
that's right.
But I think he was like the tambourine man. Like, I don't even know. I think he was like a role player, but then obviously just every show totally sold out. So he was playing like 300 capacity clubs, you know? So I don't know what his entourage was like, but it must have been intense to be Macaulay Culkin with like a green room the size of a closet and just people trying to meet you.
Yeah, I'm sure it was. Sure it was pretty wild. But that's cool. Yeah, you're right, man. Just fuck off and do whatever you want once you've got enough money. That's kind of the dream, isn't it? Like, just get to where we can just make whatever music we want to make and play whenever we want to play. How do we get there?
Yeah,
man?
I mean, I would think that is the new American dream, and it doesn't obviously apply to just music, kind of doing what you want to do, and that's kind of more possible now more than ever, just because there's so many more jobs in the world.
Yeah.
You know, when you have the internet at your fingertips, you can really dig in there and find remote jobs. You can just find your niche a bit easier. The work from home thing, I think, is generally good for morale for people to just have some more avenues and new types of employment that might suit their taste palette a bit more. But at the same time, I think when you have everything all at once, like you look at everything on the internet, you can really fall into those traps of comparison and just, it's classic.
Man.
You compare yourself to everyone else on the internet and it's like, oh, my life isn't as good as that guy's
Totally.
or whatever. So, I mean, everybody deals with that.
Yeah. There's a line in my song that's coming out Friday that's literally like, comparing myself to others drives me insane. You know, it's just like being in that hole and looking at people on the internet and going, should I be playing more shows? Should I be doing this? Should I be living in a different city?
Mm-hmm.
Like
I
everybody's
mean,
showing you the best part of their lives. You know, it's like
for
not
sure,
really real.
for sure. There's nothing to be gained there, I think. And I always think, I feel like it's good. Like, obviously you got to be on social media in this business, you know, to keep your stuff kind of out there. But I think it's good to follow people that really, really inspire you, and then also follow people that make you cringe, you know, at least a few of them to kind of like know what not to do and remind you, you know. And we've all
Balance it out.
We've all had cringy posts on the internet, I'm sure. You know, you learn, you know, we were on the first wave of social media, so we're all kind of learning as we go how to use it and not let it kill us and not be too cringy on there.
I had a blog in 2003, man. I can't imagine. That's probably still out there somewhere. Don't look for it, please. But, oh my God, man. I don't know what I was saying.
Have you ever like gone back into the depths of time and like tried to scrub the internet of stuff you made back in the day?
I have. I did go through that because I was a little I was a lot more Jesus-y than I am now. So there was a little bit of that going on the internet, and like, man, let's scrub the world of that. We don't need any more of that in the world. But dude, as I was gonna say, you've been full-time music, right? You're just doing your thing. You're touring, you're making records, you got your Patreon thing going on. Are you working any kind of other side thing to bring in income, or is this just what you've done forever?
Yeah, I've been doing this full-time about 11 years now. So, I mean, the first couple years I had some weird side jobs. Like I officiated basketball games. Shit, my mom's calling me and it's coming through on my headphones. Can you hear it on there?
I cannot hear it.
Okay,
no.
Cool. All right. Okay.
Hi, Brett's mom. Sorry.
Yeah, so I was like officiating basketball games, like middle school basketball games, high school games, where the parents would just scream at me on the sidelines while they like
not fun.
ate donuts and drank big gulps.
Yeah,
call it both ways, refs. Shit like that. So, but you know, I mean, the the past 8 years, this has been the single only thing I've done. And I'll do like little, like I've started painting the last couple of years, and I'll like sell those at shows, like abstract landscapes and stuff like that. And that's been like rewarding. I think just like when touring is your main source of income, you know, you start to get into your mid 30s, as you know, and you're like, wow, this is like getting harder to do. I feel less, a little less energy, a little less immortal. You know, you do the lap a few times and you're like, wow, can I like do this into my 40s and 50s? I mean, I'm going to, I think, if the world allows me and my body allows me to. But at the same time, it's like, you never know. So
what keeps you going? How do you keep going? What keeps you going?
I just can't. I really can't, unless I'm like making stuff. I just kind of slowly fall apart. It sounds pathetic, but that's like my main source of mental stability, and I don't know if that's good or not. I think it's much more good than bad, because I think like my fear of failure keeps me motivated. Like my anxieties are, you know, pretty useful. It's a lot of that stuff can be really good, and that's kind of the fuel for what kicks me in the ass and gets me to wake up in the morning. But I mean, I'm just pumped to still be doing it. Like most of my friends have retired from music or pursuing arts as a living, and I totally get it. It's brutal. So I'm just honored to still be in the game, you know, eking out a living in the arts. And I definitely have like, I mean, you can probably relate to this too, Meckler, where, you know, you might be having a great day, but there's at least one moment in every day where I just have like total dread, like existential dread, where it's like, man, I don't know if I can keep doing this, or what if nobody likes this next batch of song. You know, you start to script write in your head, and you like kind of start to create these shitty narratives for yourself. But
you know, I felt like for me, like where are you at with substances? Like for me, like when I was a little more on substances, that was worse. You know what I mean? The like self-doubt, the crippling self-doubt, the like maybe they're not going to like the next thing I release. I'm much more confident now that I'm not doing any of that stuff. Like I quit drinking a long time ago, 140, not that long, but 145 days ago or so. You know, quit smoking weed a while ago. And so it's like that stuff has really cleared up my head in a way that I think's been really positive, you know.
Yeah, sure. And I mean, I dabble in stuff, you know. I mean, I love caffeine. I drink beer on the weekends. I'm such a lightweight that it's you know, I mean, the tax of just drinking 3 beers, it to me is just, can be like the blues can be quite hectic the next day. So yeah, but still, you know, even if you're treading lightly, it still can knock you off balance. But it's just never been a quote unquote problem in a traditional cliche sense of the word, of like derailing or like drinking a lot or having it affect my relationship. So I've never really considered quitting. And I don't know if that would be the answer or not, because I don't know. Sometimes it like, not to endorse substance, but sometimes that stuff can be your friend. You know, it's like, oh yeah, man. Sometimes, you know, you get yourself out of a neutral state of mind, and that can really put you in a creative tornado. You know, whether it's a little bit of caffeine or, you know, you've been thinking in a similar avenue for weeks or years on end, and you want to write, you know, after a little bit of dubage. Like all that stuff can be useful if you like treat it with respect and treat it as like your buddy or your ally, you know?
Yeah. I've been listening to a little bit of Gabor Mate, the clinical psychologist. He's done some interviews on some like mental health podcasts, and man, it was interesting to hear him talk about psychedelics and obviously like LSD was developed by the federal government to help treat PTSD, but like there's all this stuff that people do with psychedelics to, it's like gain some clarity and direction in their lives and have these experiences. But then, you know, it's like I haven't said this on the podcast. I don't know how much I want to go deep, but like my 2014 album, it's like I wrote all of that music while I was hitting the vape, you know, and it was like all that's some of my best writing. I mean, like I love that music, and it's some of the stuff that people still gravitate towards as listeners today, even though I've released several more albums with my orchestra, where I think the music is more there's more stuff going on. It's like a little more close to my heart, but it's like people still want to go back to that 2014 record. I'm like, man, there's some magic in that.
Yeah, dude, it's a trap.
Yeah.
It's a trap.
I'm certainly not against it, man. It's just like now I'm experimenting with the other side.
Yeah, well, if you want to be like romantic about the creative process, you could do each album on a different substance and really drive yourself into the ground for 6 months while you write it, and then try to climb out of the troughs.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I'm being facetious. How do you say that word?
Facetious.
Yeah, that's a hard word to say.
That's a good one. I like that. Facetious and loquacious at the same time.
I'm not even sure I know what that means. It just sounded like the word that would fit in that sentence. Did I use that right?
You used it correctly. Yeah. I wouldn't say I'm a huge vocab nerd, but I do read a lot. I'm trying to be smart in life,
Dude, it feels good to read, and it's hard to get into books, but once you do, it's very liberating to just like get away from the Netflix train for a little bit. It's you pile up Netflix 7-8 nights in a row, and it's like, I don't know, it's inevitably has an effect on you.
Yeah, I definitely do more Netflix when I'm on the road, like when I'm able to. It's like we did our sound check. Now we're just chilling in the green room. I'll be like headphones in, Netflix on my phone, But at home, it's like my life's a little too hectic to even watch TV. I mean, it's like it's hard. If I try to watch TV, I'm falling asleep or some shit.
Do you get into audiobooks?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, man. I listened to Atomic Habits by James Clear a few times through recently. Man, that's such a great book. And then, I read Outliers. It wasn't an audiobook, but the Malcolm Gladwell book. I read that on iBooks, so I'm like reading it on my phone. But yeah, I have a bunch of other audiobooks that I've been listening to. Oh man, The 48 Laws of Power. That book is crazy and sinister, man. Holy shit.
I looked at that once. I couldn't get into it.
Fucking sinister,
basically,
man.
The guide to like try to take over the world and become a cult leader.
Yeah, essentially, man. It's crazy. It's pretty crazy, but it's all done with like historical examples of how people manipulated people around them and then took over a government or took over a country. It's like ancient Rome, it's like all these different. It's a wild book. I read the whole thing, and some of it you're like, okay, I can see how this could be advantageous. Like, if you have a big idea, kind of keep it close to your chest. There's certain things like, when you have something that you think could be big and then you start telling people about it, people just give you what they think. And it's like, I don't care what you think. I'm doing this thing that I came up with. You know what I mean? And sometimes you need that insulation to get the seed to sprout, and then you can kind of move from there. I mean, I feel a little bit like that with the app we've been developing. It's like when we first started developing, people were like, it could be this and it could be this and it could be this. And it's like, yeah, but I spent 10 years as a full-time trumpet player, and this is what I needed. So that's what we're going to build. And then maybe we'll add that other stuff too. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I wonder if you can use those powers or that book for good. I don't even know if I want to know all that information,
Yeah, it's in my head now. It's in my head now. I don't know.
Here's a question for you, Meckler.
Yeah.
What do you think the percentage of readers reads actual books versus audiobooks now?
That's a good question. I don't know, man. I have a feeling that there's not a lot of people reading actual books. And so it's either audiobooks or looking at the iPhone to read iBooks, which is still reading. But it's not really the same as like tactile turning pages. You know what I mean? It's not the same experience. It doesn't. So you get the smell of a book. I've got a lot of books stacked on my desk. I really like to read. It's just like it's hard to really, like you said, man. It's hard to get into. Once you get in, then you can flow. But it's hard to sit down and commit. I don't know. Maybe 50% at least are listening to audiobooks, I would think.
Yeah. I've never dove into that world before, but that's interesting. Like I'm trying to work on a book, and I'm just thinking like, oh shit, this is so much work. This is like the most work out of any arts project I've ever done. And then I'm going to have to figure out a way to do an audiobook. Like it just sounds insurmountable. Like,
no, man, that's totally doable. Just hack away at it little by little. Dude, I love this idea, man. Like what is the book about? Is it like your podcast, Dirt from the Road? Is it road stories? What is it?
It kind of is. I mean, I haven't even talked about it yet, but because I'm so far away from finishing it, but I'm like, collecting all these. I've been keeping tour journals for years, so I'm collecting all my tour journals of like when I moved to Asia, when I quit all my jobs and just started pursuing music full time, and it's just like these weird like kind of nomadic drifterism kind of, you know, tales of just wandering around trying to figure out my shit, living in Vietnam, touring.
Wow.
It's basically an accumulation of all the weirdest places and all the weirdest venues I've ever played. So yeah,
Cool.
I'm just plowing through that. I have a really rough first draft, and I'm just going through and like trying to cut out the fat, cut out words, trying to cut out things that make me sound like a douchebag or pompous or puffy chested, trying to cut out stuff that's boring or not interesting. So I don't know. I put out a book 2 years ago, but it was like an illustrated book of like kind of like mental health comedy. So it was all illustrations. It was a much different thing. And this is my first time kind of taking a crack at prose, as they call it. So
yeah, that's cool,
yeah, we'll
man.
see how
There's
it goes.
Another merch item for your merch table on tour too, man. Like my, I tour with this band, Youngblood Brass Band, and the leader of that has a couple of poetry books he's written and published, and he sells those at the merch table. And I know
nice.
he moves a lot of copies of those books. He's a rapper too, so like part of his thing is doing, he's rapping, so he's like rapping poetry or so.
Wow.
Connected.
Do you have any products on your merch table that like aren't music or hats or apparel?
Yeah, so we did. So I had this band Nookie Jones for a while. That's now sort of defunct, but we did wine glasses because that band was like real kind of like we wore suits. It was like vintage neo soul funk kind of stuff, and we had this thing called the Soulful Soiree, which was 2 nights at the Ice House every year that we'd sell out both nights and just crush. That band was crushing, and then the pandemic hit and it just fell apart. Man, what a fucking bummer. But we did wine glasses that would have like Nookie Jones or like Soulful Soiree on them, so they were like, and that was an interesting thing to like order and hope that it comes and hope they're not broken and all that stuff, and move them to gigs. But we would sell those. We did wax vinyl, like specialty wax that were printed in the UK, and those were real like niche audience kind of people who are wax collectors, wax vinyl collectors.
Okay. Nookie Jones is an awesome band name.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Yeah, Joneson for some Nookie. Yeah, and everybody'd be like, "Are you Nookie?" To the lead singer. I'd be like, "No, my name's Cameron."
Wait, so like I only know the Nookie from Fred Durst and Limp Bizkit. So Nookie, is that a term for getting sex? Yeah, okay.
It's a real old school like 1920s, 30s.
Oh, it is. Okay. Kind of like the word jabroni. Like it's like an old time term for like
jabroni.
Yeah, like a chump. And then
to me, that's like a 90s The Rock, Dwayne Johnson.
Well, he brought it back. Dwayne The Rock Johnson called jabronis were the word was originally jobbers for like guys in early wrestling that just sucked, that would just get their ass kicked all the time and that was their role, just to be
their
like
role.
Failures. So he would call chumps jabronis, and then it just kind of blew up into the vernacular.
Well, I love that. It's such a great. Yeah, it's like just hearing The Rock's voice in my head. The people's elbow.
Yeah.
I had some childhood memories of that. Yeah, man.
Wrestling was huge. I mean, I'm sure it still is. Like, I mean, yep. I can't watch a Dwayne The Rock Johnson movie to save my life, but I respect what he does and how he's just still in the game.
Yeah, I watched one of the movies with him and Kevin Hart, and it was silly
brutal.
And funny, and,
Jumanji,
right.
brutal.
It wasn't Jumanji. It was like some Netflix thing. I can't, it's like it's hard for me now because there are so many good shows, so many good movies, so much good writing, so much good acting that it's like to have that. It's hard for me to watch that shit. I watched the new Top Gun with my brother. My brother was like, "Dude, this movie's awesome. You're gonna love it," And I was like, this is hard to watch. It's like hard to watch. It's just like these people are cast only because they're beautiful.
Well, I mean, and I mean, films, as everything becomes so data driven, it's like, why would these movie studios take risks? They're going to use the same template they used for the other action movies that did well. You kind of just write the same script. You switch the characters around. You have the same peaks and valleys, a similar romantic story. The right villain, and it's going to do okay. So I think that's why. I would think there'd be some sort of bigger resurgence of indie film because of that reason. But you know,
well, there is. I mean, there are tons of amazing indie films. Man, I just watched one with Adam Driver in it that was really cool. And they did this thing where the dialogue overlapped a lot, and it was kind of chaotic and hectic. And I just love it when things twist my brain. I really like weird music too, and like listening to free jazz, you know, stuff that really like. My wife, I turn on. My wife is like, God, how could you listen? You know, and it's for me, it's like this really. I don't know. I'm kind of drawn towards chaos, and
Wow.
and then I write stuff that's like super palatable. You know, it's like it's kind of silly, but yeah, man. There was a man. I can't remember what it's called now. White Noise. White Noise is the name of the movie. It was really cool. It got a bunch of bad reviews, of course, but it's like
that's the thing. Like, you can make a great indie movie, but you're probably going to lose your ass on it financially. You know what I mean?
They're definitely losing their ass for sure.
I've never actually met anyone that likes free jazz. Like, what does that do for you? Like, just like the total chaos of like no melody, just sounds kind of like banging on pots and pans to a dumbass like me. Yeah.
Misconception. No melody, big misconception. Dude, like go listen to Ornette Coleman. Man, some of the most beautiful melodies. Ornette Coleman essentially like invented free jazz, right? Like 1959, Miles Davis released Kinda Blue, which is like the biggest, most famous, best-selling jazz album of all time. And it was like hyper palatable. It was like beautiful and soft and rounded edges, and everybody loved it. The same year, Ornette Coleman was like, fuck everything. No chord changes, nothing. I'm not going to tell, like, there's a famous story of Ornette hanging with his bass player, and he brought in these melodies, and the bass player was like, well, what are the chords under the melody? And Ornette was like, oh, okay. And he walks over, and he writes a chord change above every single note in the melody. And Charlie Hayden, the bass player, goes, okay, so no chords then? It's like, because it's like impossible to play a different chord over every single note. So it's like Ornette's point was always just like follow the melody. Wherever the melody wants you to go, that's where you go. And the way that band played together, it's like I've really grown an appreciation for that style of playing that I really like, you know, with anything, but especially with art music, it's like it takes time. You got to be in it a little while. You got to know like what you're listening to, what to listen for. And that's part of the whole problem with jazz, right? It's like it's this intellectual demon that's like really hard to, it's this mountain that's hard to climb, you know?
Yeah.
But once you get there, it's like it could be really, but his melodies, man, Lonely Woman, this tune Faithful, like if there are two to check out for Ornette, man, these beautiful melodies that are just haunting and totally, otherwise everything around it is free-ish. They're still formed too, but they're just kind of like blowing things wide open, you know? And those were, I think the first one, Lonely Woman, was 59 on that The Shape of Jazz to Come album, which was, he begged the record label not to call it that. I'm sorry, I'm on my fucking jazz soapbox right now.
No, it's cool.
Yeah, he begged the label not to call it The Shape of Jazz to Come. He's like, it's too pretentious, but they called it that. That's like his big record. But then in 64, 66, he released this album that has this tune Faithful on it. And there's an 8-year-old drummer on the record. The drummer is 8 years old. And he got a lot of flack for that, but like his whole point was like, self-expression is for everyone, and anyone can be expressive. You know, my father-in-law, Jake's dad, you know, my father-in-law's a painter, and he took this class. He talks about how he took this class in college where the teacher opened up the class with, you too once knew how to make great art, you know. It's like everybody knew how to express, you know.
Well said, Meckler. And I think like just like taking risks in art is so important because, you know, as time goes on, you want to make shit that people like, you know, maybe you want to sell records or you want to make paintings that you can sell. And I think when you're taking, I think you run the risk of, you do that too much and you become an entertainer as opposed to an artist, you know, and those are like two very different things. So,
totally.
I think you got to be willing to bomb. You got to be willing to try weird shit with weird corners in it that maybe somebody hasn't tried before. And it's going to feel weird and maybe unnatural and people might hate it. But I think that keeps you away from being a cruise ship entertainer with a headset microphone. You know, you want to keep challenging yourself and you need to bomb a few times, you know.
Sure.
Or many times.
You know, listening through your music a little bit, I listened to that whole EP, but I listened to a bunch of other singles that were listed on your Spotify too. And I'm curious, like, you know, it seems like you have a pretty consistent sound. It's like sonically, it's relatively consistent. It's like sometimes it's electric guitar, sometimes it's acoustic guitar up front, and then the band opens up. It's like, but in terms of like the sound of your voice, the writing style, it feels consistent to me in a good way. Like I can latch on to what Newski is, who Brett Newski is. Do you ever think about finding the intersection between what people want to hear and the music you want to make, or are you purely like, I'm making the music I want to make, and if people like it, great. If not, oh well.
Yeah, I mean, definitely the latter. I it's not cool to admit it, but I actually enjoy listening to my own records. I like listening to them. I mean, I want to make music I would like to listen to. And, I think musically, a lot of times I don't feel like we're reinventing the wheel or anything, but I think the thing that makes our band kind of unique is like the lyric writing and the word, just having like kind of off kilter lyrics, or maybe just a twist of humor without going too ham-fisted. I think that's, as time goes on, like every chord progression's been done a million times. You've heard every drum beat before. So to me, lyric writing is always the thing that can like make music stand out. And that's, people listen to music in different ways, but I always feel like that's our strength as a band. I feel like that's one of the things I'm best at, is like is being a lyricist. So I feel like that's the aspect of songwriting I put probably the most effort into, to make it its own thing. And then second, probably melody, and third, kind of groove or feel. We're not very groovy. Like Noel Gallagher once said, if you can't make them dance, you gotta make them sing. Yeah.
I like that, man. I like that. It's funny. On the jazz side, Duke Ellington said, they're not dancing to our music anymore. We're in trouble.
Yeah, dude, the groove is key. Groovy music is in, and that's I totally get it. I kind of like how actually my buddy Otto had a great point. He said like slow jams are more in than ever now because people smoke weed. Like in the 90s, like a slow jam would come on and you'd be like, oh, I'll skip this track. This is like kind of the dud or the weak track. I want to rock. But now that weed is legal, a lot more people are smoking it. People want the slow jams, I
never thought it could be like the lo-fi effect too, man. It's like, I never really thought of it that way, but that makes a lot of sense.
It's something. Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense. My buddy in LA, he's always like, yeah, I just hit the pen a bunch of times and made a beat. It's like, want to put some horns on it? I'm like, yeah, man, let's go.
Yeah, you can always tell a band that smokes weed and a band that does not smoke weed,
Yeah, man. Dude, I have all these questions about like the nitty gritty. I want to talk a little bit about it because it's like being able to sustain a full-time career in music is really awesome, and that's like something that it's like anyone should be proud of. But I want people listening to this podcast to know how. So talk to me about your Patreon. You mentioned when we were chatting on the phone the other day, you were like, man, if I didn't have the Patreon, I would have been completely fucked when the pando hit.
Mm-hmm.
But also we go into, the thing ebbs and flows. Like for me, when I was full time, it was like December, January would dip, and then it was like come back up in the spring and summer. You know what I mean? So it's like to have something that can level you out a little bit. What has Patreon done for you, and like what kind of things do you offer there?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I got one going about maybe 3 years ago, and I got it. It was kind of a soft release. I started like adding it under my email blast, adding the link and promoting it lightly. But when we put out this album in I don't know, whatever year, it was called Don't Let the Bastards Get You Down. And it was coming out basically right before the Pando. But instead of doing like a Kickstarter or like a fundraising campaign or whatever, I did like hey, we want to get 30 patrons in 30 days as like part of the album launch to help kind of support the record and get it out there. And then we ended up getting 80 people on in that first month. So it was like, okay, cool. I have like a functioning Patreon page. There's like 160 people on here. I can pay my mortgage and my groceries, and it was like to have that the basic living expenses covered. It like took so much pressure off my shoulders as I was like, shit, I don't have to take these 3 shitty gigs this month. And it really just kind of opened things up to focus a lot more on creating and basically throwing out, 5-10 hours a week of like shitty, dirty work that I would do to scrap together coin. I mean, the people that have been on there have just been huge. And I mean, there has to be a model like that these days now that music is basically free. And unless you're in that kind of top 1 or 2% in the streaming algorithm, you're not making any money. I've never been on the inside of the Spotify algorithm or whatever. And I get checks from them for $42 or $28 or whatever here and there. But it's just not a sustainable thing right now. So yeah, I think the subscription model is the way things are going. And I think listeners are getting very slowly more trained to that. Like, hey, like if you like an artist, like they have a very finite lifespan to keep doing this financially unless like people jump in. So as a listener, as a consumer of art, like I think people need to realize what great power they have, even if it's just one person. Like you can make an impact on an artist or an indie band or a creative person. Just one Patreon sign up is like, it's also a big boost to morale too, so
totally.
That gives me a bit of hope, like moving forward. And I think everyone's Patreon, just like an email list, it ebbs and flows. You pick up a few followers, you lose a few. So I think
I was going to ask how many hold steady. I was going to ask about that.
Yeah.
So it kind of,
it's down right now a little bit, but I think every other year, every third year, I think it's important to like do some sort of month-long campaign where you really focus on driving people to that.
Okay.
And I was crunching my books for 2021, and like the band spent $67,000 to get by the end of that album campaign. So I think that's a insane number that I don't think like people would realize what goes into it. And it's like, yeah, you might play a festival and make $2,000. You might make $3,000 on a festival, and people might be like, "Wow, you're really rolling in it." But at the end of the day, if you actually look at the back end of the books, it's like it's pretty terrifying.
So was that what it cost to make Friend Rock? Are you talking about like the new record that's coming out?
This was the last album cycle.
Oh,
so
okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think by the end of a touring campaign where we're kind of at, and it might be, I put out a book that year, so it might be a little bit less. But by the time you tour a record for a year and print everything, do the promo, hire the promo people, you know how this goes.
Are you doing publicist and radio as well? Like publicist and radio promo?
Yeah. I've done all that stuff. Radio is becoming much harder. I think smaller indie bands are getting away from like spending a lot of money on radio. Because there's just so few slots to get spins in that game. And I mean, expect like we're a dorky band of straight white guys. Like we are not in right now. Like this is like the press is not going to be into this right now. So we kind of got to go directly to the people, and I think that's where you try to kind of change your marketing model and spend less on publicists and traditional press and go more toward digital marketing, where you can like go directly to the geeky melodic jangle pop alternative pop listeners.
So man, I was listening to Dirt from the Road a little bit, and you were talking about doing the publicist thing, the 60,000, like you said you were in a $60,000 hole, and now you're doing, or like from trying to get this thing going, and now you're doing pre-orders for vinyl and pre-orders for CDs, and you're booking this. So you got a tour coming up March 29th, is that right? It starts?
Yeah, we're going to Canada and then all over the USA.
Cool, awesome. Yeah, so man, I enjoyed the podcast. Tell me about how that got started, and you're talking about road stories. There was a reason why I wanted to talk about this, and it left my brain. Something to do with a book Road stories.
Oh, yeah, I don't, maybe it was the.
Oh,
go.
you said tour journals.
Yeah.
You were offering that. I think you mentioned on the podcast that you were offering that as like a regular feature on Patreon now, and you were also talking about making that into a book. Is that the same content as something I was going to ask?
Right. Well, I've just been writing hard for the past 2 years. Like I try to write every morning, even if it's just a page. So I've accumulated all this stuff from tours or travels or like, going through the Joshua Tree Desert or staying in a shitty hotel in downtown LA for a couple days, or like going across Europe or traveling the Czech Republic to visit my brother. So I have all these like weird journals of kind of like, this whatever the word would be, drifterism or kind of these like nomadic journals, and they're sad and weird but fun. I think they're pretty funny too. So I guess just putting people in the bucket seat of kind of what goes on between shows, after a gig, before a gig, how to keep a level head. Why is there a man in the Czech Republic walking down the street with a wolf on a leash? You see some pretty weird shit out there. So it's fun to document it all. And I think that long form just gives you so much more freedom to capture a lot of these moments that I think are really, really beautiful. There's like, I'm kind of trying to romanticize the mundane a little bit, because I think it is, it's fun, and it's I'm obsessed with travel, so I want to share it with people. But that's a thing I just started. I call it Secret Tour Journals, and I'm starting to put them out every Friday, and those are exclusive to the Patreon page. But I do also put out tour journals on my email list. But I don't double up or anything. So I gotta write a lot of stuff to kind of keep all the content fresh across both things.
Yeah. So do you find that the regular daily, like sit down and write long form, that kind of keeps juices flowing in terms of your songwriting too? Does that feed the same beast a little bit?
Dude, well, great question, because I haven't written a song in 8 months. It's basically taken the place of songwriting as like my creative kind of endeavor right now. So hopefully I don't go back to songwriting and fucking suck at it. But I don't think that will be the case. I think at a certain point, I mean, I'm sure you wrote your ass off during the pandemic, or you have these stretches where you kind of you're in the zone, and you're just kind of, you feel like you're riding the lightning a bit, and you're just writing songs every day, every other day. And at a certain point, you don't need more songs. It's like to write more songs at a certain point would be not a good use of time. So I think I'm a big fan of like doing things in buckets or stretches or batching, where you like do one creative thing all in a row and just fucking try to do it, blow by it, keep going. And then when you kind of tie a bow on the end or wrap it up or kind of collect a bunch of that particular type of art or content, then move on to a different project.
Yeah. Do you like to be able to cut songs out of a record? Like, do you like to have enough songs that you can go, these 3 aren't going to go on the record, these 12 are? Or, it's like you were talking a little bit about redacting, removing things from your book that you're working on, like getting rid of the stuff that doesn't work or whatever. And I feel like as a composer, like somebody who writes music in the traditional sense, like a big part of making a composition work is taking out stuff. It's just going like, man, there's too much here. There's too much here. I'm obscuring the melody here. You know what I mean? So do you feel like that's something that you try to get towards, or are you just like, I wrote these 12 songs, I'm going to record these 12 songs?
No, man, I think you're right. You got to have, especially with songwriting and writing in this book, it's like you want to have a pile of shit that you can chop off the weakest 30% or whatever, or the weakest 40%. And I think that's kind of, I mean, that's a classic like major label model for putting out an album, right? They would be like, hey, Rivers Cuomo, write 50 songs and we're going to take 10 of them, So I think that's kind of the way to make something that's really tight and really, really good. It's not necessarily always the answer, but painting doesn't work that way. Illustration doesn't necessarily work that way. But I think for songwriting and like prose, that's the right model. Maybe composing as well. Yeah.
Dude, real quick, I want to talk about your Spotify. You've got, because I think a lot of people are dealing with this. Like a lot of people in my lane who like, or my age, who like sold CDs, we're just now going like, all right, fine, we'll try and play the Spotify game. You know what I mean? And you've got two artist names. You've got Newski now, which I think you're trying to push everything towards.
Yeah.
And you've got Brett Newski up there, and they both have 3,000-4,000 monthly listeners or so, which I know ebbs and flows. So I'm curious, like, what's your strategy for marrying those audiences, making sure that people that like Brett Newski are finding Newski, and are you able to, if you're releasing under both names, are you able to pitch playlists on each side?
Great question, man. I don't know if I have an answer for that yet because it's so new. I toured by myself for the first 8 years. So playing under my name as a solo act, Brett Newski, made a lot more sense. And now the past 2-3 years, it's all band all the time in this kind of like indie, alternative rock genre. So it just, to me, it made so much more sense to start playing under the name Newski. Now, this creates a problem for me on the streamings with splitting profiles. And maybe you would have good advice as to how to do this. But at the moment, I release a song and I'll tag Newski as the primary artist and Brett Newski as the secondary artist, or another primary artist. So it shows up.
Yeah.
It shows up to all the followers from both accounts, which seems to be working, but it's a bit of a pain in the ass. I don't know if I should get in touch with them and try to merge the profiles or what the move is, or maybe just leave that as a past era, and start only releasing stuff under Newski. I don't know. Maybe you have some insights on that.
Well, I mean, I think that's a tough call to make, and I'm not sure if anyone, like, you could probably contact Spotify, but man, I think that would probably be a difficult road to try to get them to merge two accounts. But I also was told by I work with this record label, and they were like, yeah, unless it's for sure two different primary artists that are a part of the record, because I said, why don't we release this single under Adam Meckler as well, because I have some traction with getting editorial playlisting and yada yada, and then I can pitch it from Adam Meckler and we can pitch it from Supercell. And the guy was basically like, no, we're not going to do that. The guy from the label, because Spotify could flag it or whatever. I don't know if that's true or not, and it seems like all of your stuff lists Brett Newski and Newski. I was like kind of looking through, trying to see like how did he handle this, but I don't know, man. I think I would do what you're doing, is like two primary artists, and then if I'm able to pitch editorial playlists on both sides, I would do that. But then just trying to catch those audiences and show up in the release radars of the people that are already listening and already invested in you as an artist.
Yeah. No, for sure. I don't think you can pitch editorial playlist twice on the same song, as far as I can tell.
Well, you can. Like,
can you?
If you collaborate with someone else. Like, I've been doing these collaborative things with Jason Fabus, this guy JFab, who makes these beats, and I've been doing a bunch of horns, and he's just making the beat, and he'll pitch it on his end, and I'll pitch it on my end, and we'll release it as two separate primary artists. So you can pitch on both sides. If you're under the same Spotify for Artists account, maybe not.
Yeah, okay, that must be my corner. I mean, what's been moving the needle for you, Meckler, on the Spotify pitching stuff? Because I've really been ready to just shove my head in the sand and call it a day. I've put so much time into figuring it out, and I just can't crack it. I might be done. Motivate me.
I don't know, man. Like, I think I found something that's really niche and that has a lot of editorial playlists, and a lot of people listen to the kind of music that we're making as let's throw it on and study. Let's throw it on in this like hip little bar. You know what I mean? It's like these playlists that people listen to when they're smoking weed or whatever. Like he talks about this like lo-fi beat, kind of jazz-tronica jazz. It's like we were placed on a bunch of those different editorial playlists. But yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. I always talk about mood a little bit. I always say that like I've got video that I'm going to promote on socials, and I want to push people towards the Spotify. So I'll mention those things. But you can do it all right and not get placed. I mean, I was just listening to Ari Herstand's podcast about this, and he was talking about he was talking to the guy who runs Spotify for artists. And he was like, what the hell, man? I've got reviews. I've got all this stuff. I'm putting it in the description. Why is my shit not getting placed,
Yeah.
And the guy was like, well, a real human listens to every single editorial playlist. So that part, or every editorial pitch. So that part is cool.
That I don't believe.
That's what he said. The guy said it. It's straight from the horse's mouth. Who knows if it's true or not? A real human listens to everyone, he says. And, I think for me, what's helped is collaborative work with other artists that already have a little bit of a following, already have like a foot in the door with editorial playlists. So maybe you'll find with your Friend Rock album where I think you've got the dude from Guster on it, the dude from Verve Pipe, right?
Yeah.
So you've got like some names. It's like maybe you'll find that dropping those names in an editorial playlist pitch will bump you to the top of the list. I don't know. I hope so, man. Your music's great. I'm enjoying it.
That's a thing I'm figuring out with this now, because it's like do I tag Guster or do I tag Ryan Miller, the singer? I don't want to get myself in trouble and get into a legal situation,
Yeah. I wonder if you can ask.
Yeah, I did. I just hit him with an email, so hopefully I'll find out soon.
That's Ryan Miller and Brian Vander Ark. Is that right?
Yeah, because I tagged Verve Pipe. We put that song out as a single, and Brian's a great guy. Like, he was super chill with everything. But then management, I didn't tell management about it, and they got pissed at me. They're like, untag Verve Pipe from it's showing up on our Spotify latest single. So he was mad. And so I had to pull it off there before the manager guy was like sued my ass into oblivion, which,
wow,
what can you do? But I think we're cool now. Or maybe I'm blacklisted. Good. I don't know.
Well, you're collaborating with Brian again, so maybe.
Yeah, it seems okay. He's a legend.
Seems like you're all right.
He's been on the podcast twice. He's one of the funniest dudes. I think he's one of the best episodes both times. So check out those episodes, Brian Vander Ark on Dirt from the Road.
Cool. Yeah, man. Well, we'll link all your stuff. We're going to link Brett Newski. We'll link the Dirt from the Road podcast, which I've been listening to. It's great. We'll link your Patreon. Send me some links, too, if you want, like me to link a video or whatever. We'll link all that stuff for Brett. Check out Brett's stuff. Dude, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to me, man. This was awesome.
Meckler, you're a great man, and you're doing good work here. I like that you're trying to help people out, because without our buddies, we are fucked, So it's good to share intel, share contacts, share information. All this kind of stuff makes me feel a bit better about the whole trajectory of things, and knowing other people are out there doing it as well. And yeah, we're all over the road this March, April, May. So all over the Midwest, East Coast, West Coast, Pacific Northwest, Canada. It's newskimusic.com. If you're into those, if you're into 90s kind of jangly guitar rock shit, maybe we're in your wheelhouse, maybe not.
Hell yeah, it's great. I know I got a lot of listeners in the Midwest. I saw you're going to Appleton, Milwaukee, Minneapolis. So I know I got a lot of people that listen in those areas. Go see Chicago. Go see.
All right, Meckler, much love, dude. Thanks again, and keep in touch. We'll talk soon.
Yeah, man, sounds good. Thanks, dude.
Later.
Woo. Thank you so much for listening to my conversation with Brett Newski. If you dig the show, please tell a friend. Post about it on social media. Rate us 5 stars wherever you listen. Subscribe wherever you listen. All those things will help us. We've got a YouTube page where the videos for these conversations end up. So if you want to watch the conversations, you can. Most of them are via Zoom, but some are in person. We've also got an app called the Gig Boss app, and it's an organizational tool for freelance musicians, band leaders, bands. It's a way for you to organize all your stuff. Plan your next tour with it. If you play in a million bands like I did when I was a full-time player, it's a great way to keep all of that stuff straight. You can enter all the details to the gigs, see everything, find directions, contact other people in the band, sync it to your Google Calendar. We're building out a books page right now where you can do all kinds of financial tracking and stuff. It's great. It's great. It's going to make your life easier, and it's free, so try it. There's a link down there in the description. There's also a playlist where we've got music from everybody who's been on the podcast who's a musician, so you can check that out as well. There's all kinds of stuff. If you want to talk about things, there's a Facebook Gig Boss podcast page. whatever. If you're still listening, I'm assuming that you're a real one. And I appreciate you very much for being one of the real ones. And keep listening. There's more great episodes coming. See ya.